So updates from yesterday in Ferguson. Unfortunately, yesterday, another bad day in Ferguson, Missouri. First, the protesters came out during the day, perfectly fine. Everything's hunky-dory. People are mad, of course, but they're peacefully protesting, as the great majority did during the day and the night. But at night, we did have trouble. And I go to the Huffington Post here at the beginning of the story. They say police fired several rounds of tear gas into the crowd after a small number of protesters reportedly threw bottles at the officers. Shots were fired, and the cops ordered everyone without media credentials to disperse, then evacuated the media center as well. And then, of course, we rolled in the tanks. An armored vehicle moved through the crowd, and several people took off running. They continue to explain. And then they say 2 fires were set on Monday, one at a business and one at an unoccupied residence, according to Captain Ron Johnson, who's now the head of the police there, head of the highway presence there. And then you see the, highly armored vehicles, the tear gas, everybody in military equipment. As Jake Tapper put it last night, it looks like Bagram. And he explained that in the beginning, there was no problems at all. In fact, let's go to Jake Tapper right now, because I want you to understand the context before the bottles are even thrown, before guns, Molotov cocktails, anything like that. This is what was happening when night began.
All the way down there, okay? Nobody's threatening anything. Nobody's doing anything. None of the stores here that I can see are being looted. There's no violence. Now, I want you to look at what is going on in Ferguson, Missouri, in downtown America, okay? These are armed police with not machine guns, with semi-automatic rifles, with batons, with shields, many of them dressed for combat. Now, why they're doing this, I don't know. Because there is no threat going on here, none, that merits this. There is none, okay? Absolutely there have been looters, absolutely over the last 9 days there's been violence, but there is nothing going on this street right now that merits this scene out of Bagram. Nothing. So if people wonder why the people of Ferguson, Missouri are so upset, this is part of the reason. What is this? This doesn't make any sense.
We even have Jake Tapper of CNN almost literally saying, what is this? What are they doing? If you show that kind of force, sometimes what you get in return is force. So I don't know why they went back to this strategy. Ron Johnson, when he first came in, walked with the protesters, reached out to the community, did not roll in the tanks, and it was quiet and it was peaceful. Now there are people streaming in from other places. You bring out the tanks and somebody says, hey, maybe it's a tank, maybe let's throw something at it, right? And I'm not defending the people who threw it. As you're gonna see here, it's dangerous stuff, there's no question about it. But look, here's another remark from the Huffington Post. They said reporters on the scene noted that officers repeatedly pointed their weapons at protesters. You keep pointing your weapons at somebody, at some point somebody's going to point a weapon back at you. That's why it's a bad idea. It doesn't justify either side. It's just a bad idea. So now that bad idea leads to this. A Molotov cocktail and 2 guns were also confiscated from a vehicle located near the police command center. In fact, Ron Johnson, when he was doing one of his press conferences, showed pictures of it, or actually literally laid it out there. So again, he's not making this stuff up. It's right there, right? But the question is, what is precipitating that? And sometimes it's the actions of, people who are looking forward to violence and are agitating and are outside the community. And sometimes it's because you rolled in the tanks. And when you see a tank, the natural reaction is, let's fight, right? Somebody comes and pushes you, points a weapon at you, points a tank at you. You get in a fighting spirit. It's a bad idea overall for both sides. Okay. More explanation from reports on the scene. Although 31 people were arrested, many were not locals, authorities said. That some of the people detained by officers came from as far away as New York and California. Here's an interesting twist. CNN reported that white anarchists from outside of Ferguson were the ones throwing things at police. Now, you want to cause a mess in a black community? You get white anarchists come in. I don't know what their purpose is. I don't know what their politics is. Maybe they're pro-civil liberties? I don't know. They're anarchists. It's hard to figure out, right? Now, there's another report of a guy named Charles Murray, who's from the KKK, some sort of clan of wizards. You know how they play Dungeons and Dragons right now. He's saying he's going to come into the community and he wants to raise money for the cop, who killed in his words, a criminal Negro. I didn't realize KKK thought there was any other kind. Now, the main KKK says, well, no, we're not with that guy. He's some sort of offshoot of the KKK. It's a mess, right? You go into the community, listen to them. But look, it's a hard situation. Once the outsiders come in and you have people throwing Molotov cocktails, or even the threat of that, then of course the cops are going to suit up even more, right? So it's difficult. Now, Ron Johnson said, look, protesters don't clash with police. They don't throw Molotov cocktails. It is criminals that throw Molotov cocktails and fire shots. Some people are looking forward to this opportunity. They're coming in thinking, yes, now we fight the cops. Now we fight them. Well, everybody's in a fighting stance. So it's just maddening. Now, Ruth Gordon is, I think, about 73 years old. She's a protester. And she makes some interesting points. She says, I don't know how long it's going to take, but until they bring the policeman in that did this shooting, there ain't going to be no peace. So what she's pointing to there is we have a festering wound here, right? It's not just a slogan, no justice, no peace. It's that if our kids keep getting mowed down when they're unarmed, and it takes weeks and weeks and weeks to figure out, hey, should we bring in the guy who shot him? Now, come on, you know it in your heart of hearts that if it was somebody, a black resident of Ferguson that had done a shooting, they aren't going to wait weeks and weeks and weeks to arrest him if he shot a guy 6 times and twice in the head. You know it. And the whole community, even if you don't know it, certainly Ferguson knows it, right? So, Trayvon gets shot in Florida. We wait weeks and weeks. Nobody does a toxicology report on Zimmerman. Nobody, sees to see if he has a criminal background. We'll see. If there's enough protests, maybe we'll arrest him, right? Otherwise, of course, you just shot a black kid. It's fine. Can you not see the frustration? And if you can, I think you may be a little blind. Ruth Gordon continues. She says, it's coming. Peace is coming. I can't tell you when, but peace is coming. I like that she's hopeful. And I'm a hopeful person, so I generally agree with her. But a 27-year-old that just rolled in from Chicago does not agree with her. He says, as soon as he gets up off the bus, this is not the time for no peace. Okay, that's a quote from a guy coming out of town, and now they're coming with weapons. Not a good situation in Ferguson. Okay, now, meanwhile, one of the reasons that people are agitated is a story that we told you about last week. Remember Henry Davis? He's the guy who was battered and bloodied in 2009 in Ferguson. And 4 cops had detained him. He was, of course, the wrong guy. They had the wrong guy, and they beat the living crap out of him anyway. And you know what they charged them with? They charged him with bleeding on their uniforms. No joke. He actually had to pay a $3,000 fine for when they were beating him. By the way, he got a concussion, blood all over his face, and as they were bleeding him, and he was handcuffed with his hands behind his back, they said, "Oh, you bled on us." And they convicted him on 2 counts. He had to plead guilty. Because you know why? Because there is no justice. He wasn't going to get a fair trial. That was certainly his assessment. And then he sued them, as of course he should sue them. And the judge said, your injuries, even though you were taken to the hospital, bleeding all over your face, beat up by 4 cops, concussion, too minor. And their violation of your rights were too minor. I don't give a damn. Off you go. No justice again, right? Now, why am I telling you this story again? Because a fascinating development. You remember one of the officers was Kim Tien, right? Let me describe what had happened according to the court documents there. After being handcuffed, Peely's Tien, the officer, struck appellant, who's Henry Davis, in his head with a closed fist and hit appellant in the head with handcuffs. Okay, so understand this. She handcuffs him and then hits him in the head with her fist and with handcuffs. And then, after Peely Tien, that's the officer, and Peely Beard, another officer, finished giving strikes to the appellant, Tien began to raise appellant up off the floor from his stomach. As appellant was still handcuffed and being raised up off the floor, Appealee White, another officer, came in the cell towards appellant and kicked appellant in the forehead with a toe of his boot. Okay? And as Henry Davis himself now explains when a reporter called him, he said, Kim Tien, she was the one that was holding me up. I was handcuffed, laying on my stomach, and she lifted me up like 3/4 off the ground. One of the people who abused him. So whatever happened to Kim Tien? That's a good question. Well, it turns out she served on the force with no problems at all for 4 years. And you know where she is now? She's on the Ferguson City Council. You know how we talk about there's no blacks on the city council in Ferguson, even though Ferguson is 70% black? She's one of the white councilmen. Great job, well done. You beat the living crap out of an innocent black guy. You suffer no consequences for that. He has to pay $3,000. He gets a criminal conviction on his record for bleeding on your uniform, and you get welcomed to the city council. Gee, I wonder why the good people of Ferguson are upset. I can't quite tell. How blind do you have to be to not understand why they're upset? So, some have decided, hey, you know what? Look, one of the problems is the reason the city council is, almost all white. The final person on the council is Latino. Is because we don't go out to vote. Look, last time there was an election for city council, only 9% of the registered voters showed up. Okay, good. So you know what? Let's take a civil approach, a diplomatic approach, a political approach. Let's set up a voting booth. Voter registration. So people are upset. Well, then do something about it. Don't do anything violent. You're not. And during the protests, during the day is perfectly peaceful. Let's get people to sign up for voters, to become voters, so that they can actually participate in our government, our democracy, and control their own government, right? So who's furious about this? The Republican Party in Missouri. But of course they are. Of course they are. Matt Wills, Missouri RNC Executive Director, says, I think it's not only disgusting, but completely inappropriate. I mean, to have people of Ferguson voting? Totally inappropriate in a democracy. How dare you take control of your own? You should know, people should know when they're conquered. Your job is to bow your head. Don't do anything violent, don't do anything nonviolent, okay? Don't protest, don't throw rocks, don't vote. Don't register to vote, don't do anything. Just bow your head. One more quote from this disgusting guy. He says, if that's not fanning the political flames, I don't know what is. Yeah, okay, you're right, you don't know what is. See, that's not fanning the flames, that's proposing a democratic solution to the problem. Jesse Jackson says 5,000 new voters will transform the city from top to bottom, where the actual residents and citizens of the city will then be able to take control over their own city. And the Republicans, of course, are worried about exactly that. They don't want those citizens to take control of their own city. They like it when they rule them. So, oh my God, voters, how dare you? Well, then what the hell are they supposed to do? And then you wonder why they're frustrated. And you wonder why they might not be voting Republican. At a moment when they are most frustrated, to give them a political outlet, a democratic outlet, and the Republican Party says it is disgusting. Gee, I wonder why they don't support you. I can't quite figure it out. There is a different way they handle this, okay? And right now, the authorities are definitely not handling it properly. Certainly in this one case, the Republican Party is not handling it properly. Just demilitarize the whole thing, man. I know, look, overall, I trust Captain Ron Johnson. He did a great job the first couple of days. Let's let him do his work when it comes to finding and rooting out the outsiders who are causing trouble at night, okay? But give the protesters wide leeway as much as you can. And yes, involve them in the democratic process. That's supposed to be what we do in this country.